What's going on, Niner fam? It is me, Peter Lucas. This is the Niner Fanatic Podcast, and I am pleased to have with me today the host of Last Second Sport, or the owner of Last Second Sports, the Jessie Naylor. Jessie, I really appreciate you coming on today. But why don't you tell everybody where they can find all your stuff, because you're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at @JNay_LSS, and then Last Second Sports on YouTube. I gotta say, Peter, I was watching that intro. I mean, you can see me backstage. I don't know if you're watching, but there was a couple parts where I was smiling, and then it was like towards the end, just like, man, we don't get to watch this kid play football for a whole nother year, man. How much does
I'm gonna have
this
to change
it? Dude, that's like, it went from like, all right, yeah, there we go, Lance, and then it was like, dude, I'm depressed. Did you see what we just had to watch on Sunday? Are you kidding me?
God, it was. And I mean, I think you were in the spaces like me today, and I think you heard just how much kind of division there is in the fan base, and like how everybody's kind of going every which way. And that's kind of why I named this show Welp, because here we are. Here we are. All the speculation before the season started, we were all excited about all the new weapons, all this, we thought we knew what we were going to see, and well, like in none of it, I don't think any of it happened. It all happened the exact opposite way that we all thought it was. But here we are. And I mean, it is what it is. We have football. I'm still rocking 49ers till we die, and
we have football, so actually, you know what? Everybody's seen Dumb and Dumber, right? But that's one of the most underrated parts of that movie is when he walks into, it's like the gas station or 7-Eleven. He goes, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later. That's what this season is. It's like,
it really is.
49er football, huh? All right. Yeah. Well, see you later.
I mean, there's really no real words to console fans or to like sugarcoat really any of the things that are going on. But terrible loss by the 49ers. I mean, 11-10. I don't think anybody could have predicted that score. And but we might as well start off with this. What or who could be the main reason for this loss?
Man, to me, it's pretty obvious. It falls on two people. And the defense played fantastic. We know this. Special teams was pretty good. We know this. It's Jimmy and it's Kyle. Like, that's what it is. It's funny to me, Peter, because when people talk about Kyle Shanahan, you'd swear he's an offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way everybody, it's always how good his play designs are. And it's not his fault that Jimmy can't make these throws, or it's not his fault that Trey got hurt because he had to run him. He had no other choice. And look at these people running wide open all over the field. He's such a good play designer and a good play. Everything is about being an offensive coordinator. And it's like, well, sure. If you're talking about Kyle, the offensive coordinator, then no, he doesn't deserve the blame on those things. But you're talking about Kyle Shanahan, the head coach of this team, and he continues to just get skirted around like, oh, well, it's always something else. It's literally always something else. Yeah, it's never Kyle. It can never fall on Kyle's shoulders. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. So 49er fans, for those of you that are watching, let me be clear about this. Kyle Shanahan is not the offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. He is the head coach. So when you talk about Kyle Shanahan, good or bad, don't just talk about the play calling and play design. because there is so much that goes into being a head coach that he has fallen short on and continues to fall short on that has to be discussed as well. And we can say things like, and these things have happened since last year.
Yeah.
It's not his. I mean, Jimmy's just so bad, which I agree. Trust me, I see it all. But Jimmy continues to be here because why? Because the head coach, not the offensive coordinator of this team, makes the decision over and over and over to bring him back and be a quarterback on this team. So if Jimmy's as bad as some of us think he is, Kyle did not have the foresight to get rid of him early enough, move on from him, and even when he had the replacement, he still hung on to him. So, Kyle, that's on you too.
Yeah. And the way I look at it is, and I completely agree. I saw your tweet just before we got on a little bit ago, and it was, and I put that it was that's kind of a deep thought, because I think all of us think of him as an offensive coordinator because he really runs the offense. But the more and more this season, this off season, and this season has gone on, and we're only into week 3, but
Right.
but I mean, it seems like every week that there is something like hard hitting happening, something big is happening, and you have no choice but to look at Kyle and say, okay, I understand you've got guys, like you said, you got guys wide open all over the place, right? And that's great, but you are the head coach, and the product on the field is a reflection of you. That regardless of if it's Jimmy not performing correctly or what, or not, or missing guys, to me it means that your guys weren't ready to play. And you can't always look at, because everybody didn't have a bad day, but your offense, you are the offensive guy, you're the offensive genius. And so I expect more. I expect points. I expect more than 11 points. And it's frustrating, I think, for the fans, because that's the way that you're pitched every single season. Hey, well, we got Kyle. That means we're going to have a good running game.
Yep.
That means we're going to score points. That's what the way it's pitched to us. And then when it doesn't happen, when we need it to happen, it's not Kyle's fault. It was somebody else. So I 100% agree with you. At some point, you have to hold him. There has to be some kind of accountability. And when certain reporters start to ask those types of questions, we see Kyle. We get on Jimmy about a lack of accountability all the time, but how often does Kyle take accountability for anything? He gets visibly upset when people even broach the subjects. So at some point, we as fans are going to, you don't have to necessarily want him fired. I don't necessarily want him fired. I like Kyle Shanahan as a coach. However, I do hold him accountable for some of these things that are happening. And I still look at it as, I want you to be better. I want you to learn from these things and just be better. I don't know how you feel if I went too far on that.
No. Today he did. He came out. He had the interview where he took some accountability. But it's like, I don't know. To me, it's too little, too late. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't need you to take accountability publicly for that game. Like, I can look at it and tell you exactly what it was. I wanted you to take accountability last week. Where was that? Where was the accountability last week when you lost the future of the franchise? Yeah. Where was the accountability then, right? It was a bunch of snob remarks and you don't watch football and I'm smarter than you and yada, yada, yada. And then when Jimmy runs backwards out of the end zone and also throws a pick six, like, well, I put him in a bad position. Bro, he had 12 yards of leeway. Who takes a 12-yard drop into the freaking back of the end zone and then throws a pick six?
And then throws a pick.
What are we talking? You put him in a bad position? Come on, man. Like, now you want to say, oh, it's on me. I put Jimmy in a bad position. How about you put the future of the team in a bad position? We can't get that from you. I don't care what you did with Jimmy or didn't do with Jimmy. I know what Jimmy is, and I know what he's not.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a little bit too little, too late. But this is like I said, I don't want Kyle to go anywhere. I still think that there's tremendous potential with his team and with Kyle. I think that there's small things that he just needs to be humbled on. And I think that's I think that maybe he needs to go and have some therapy or something to the effect of like something that will talk to him and just explain to him how the whole managing people process goes, because I feel like accountability would go a long way, not just with the fans but with the team also. And not that they don't have a big great culture for the 49ers, but I just feel like it's it's just I just see a lack of I see a lack of leadership, and I don't want that to sound like I'm just anti Kyle, but it just shows to me kind of a lack of leadership, and it's kind of disheartening. But
My frustration with him is twofold. And again, I'm not saying fire Kyle either, but I'm not happy, right?
yeah,
Like as a 49er fan, I'm not happy. And the two issues I have with Kyle, one, he's reactive and not proactive. We talked about that many
yeah,
times over. We've seen it with so many decisions amongst this team. And then the other thing is he doesn't learn his lesson. Okay, so
yeah,
you lost your quarterback last week doing what you did with him. Okay. In a meaningless play, essentially. 2nd down and 8 or whatever it was.
yeah,
To end the half, and not a lot of people talked about this. I tweeted about it. Some people were like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. To end the half, he ran Debo for no
yeah.
reason. You could have
I
handed
saw
it
that
off to
too.
anybody. You could have kneeled the ball and walked out off the field and ended the half. But you handed it to Debo Samuel up the gut and put him in harm's way. After, by the way, this is after he had already gotten hurt in this game. What are you doing, dude?
Yeah, yeah,
That that's that
yeah,
is negligence beyond belief, in my opinion. It's literally
it,
to me, this is what it looks like. Kyle is so stubborn and so mad that he's being called out. He's like, oh, you know what? Watch this.
yeah.
Okay, dude. And what if he gets injured right before halftime on a meaningless play? What would you have said? It's football. It's
Yeah.
just football. These things happen. Okay. All right, Kyle. These things happen. It's just football.
Yeah, it's crazy because this is the thing. All the people that say, "Oh, it's just football. It's just football." And I'm so tired of that term at this point. But then if it's just football, why don't we do it in preseason? There's a
Right.
reason. There's a reason you're trying to keep your players out of harm's way. And that doesn't mean that as soon as the season starts, you just start running them into brick walls, because hey, it's football. Like that's not what it is. You're supposed to be putting your players in the best positions to succeed, and I don't feel like that's what's happening. But this is the thing: I'm not the coach of the 49ers, and Kyle is, and it's hard to argue his track record because it's mud. A lot of the waters are muddied because of the injury history and like all that other kind of stuff. But I mean, the fact is he's been to a Super Bowl, he's been to an NFC Championship, and it is what it is. But
But he also doesn't have a winning record.
that's true. But
Like
that's where I say
we
the
can
waters
point to
get muddied with the
he's been to
injuries.
the Super Bowl, he's been in the NFC Championship, doesn't have a winning record.
Yeah, that's like
Blows
kind of
10-point leads like they're going out of style.
that's kind of like the that's his whole career in like a nutshell. It's like he gets these heights, but then you have a losing record. Like
Yeah.
it's such a weird path that it takes to get to where we're going, always. And we all don't know how we're gonna get there. We just all of a sudden look up, hey, everybody's going to the NFC Championship, and we had no clue that we were even gonna make the playoffs.
Right.
Like yeah, it's pretty crazy. But how could this offense look so out of sync with so many good players on it? And were Jimmy's struggles kind of because of anything like specific, or was this just Jimmy?
I just think this is the Jimmy Garoppolo experience. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy because Jimmy is just an interesting watch because I do believe he's a starting level quarterback in this league. Some people are like, oh, he's the worst quarterback of all time and he shouldn't even be a starter. And I think people underestimate how poor QB play is really in the NFL. There's a
Yeah.
group of players that are really, really good, but for the most part, QB play in the NFL is not high quality. It's just not. And Jimmy falls into that. And however you want to rank them, anywhere from 17 to 22 or 20, whatever it is, they're all roughly the same, right?
Hmm.
And so Jimmy has these moments where it's like he makes a throw, and maybe for a Mahomes or an Allen, you're not impressed. But for Jimmy, you go, oh man, that was a good throw. I didn't expect that. And then he comes back and does something completely opposite of that and airmails a ball,
Yeah.
misses a read, throws it directly into the chest of a defender. I mean, there
Takes a
were
12-step drop into the end in the
yeah, it
back of
takes
the
a
end zone.
12-step drop into the end zone, gets a pick six safety. I've never seen such a thing in my entire
Yeah.
life. Just it's the ultimate roller coaster experience, but that's what we know it to be.
Yeah.
So there's never any surprises. It's funny because Colin Cowherd is just
Oh, that
on
guy's
his back pedal today, like he's a defensive back. I love it. But
yeah.
he came out and said something along the lines of, well, are you surprised that Jimmy played bad? He didn't have a play. Let me stop you right there. No, I'm not surprised Jimmy played bad. Colin, you and a few other people in the community are shocked that this is what you saw from Jimmy. This is Jimmy Garoppolo. This is who he is. This is start 48.
Yeah.
We see some good. We see some bad. Sometimes the 49ers can overcome it. Sometimes they cannot. And I said it yesterday while the game was on. They got a second chance to go win that game, right?
Yep.
And it ended up being a fumble by Wilson
Jeff Wilson.
that
Yeah.
ended it, whatever. But that's what Jimmy gets. He always gets a second chance to win the game. He
Yep.
always gets a second chance to win the game.
Yeah,
Green
it's
Bay.
really weird the way that
It's
happens.
the strangest thing. Green Bay throws it backwards. Defense holds the 3, gets a second chance. The Bengals throws it directly to Bates' chest. He drops it, gets a second chance. Rams to end the season, 3 and out, gets a second chance because the 49ers get a stop. They go win the game. Yesterday was the same exact thing, and he wasn't able to pull it off. Maybe he would have if Wilson didn't fumble. I don't know, but you already had your shot and you threw a pick. So that's what Jimmy is.
Yeah, it's like, but Cowherd, like, this is the thing. He, first of all, I don't care if it's on YouTube. He is the lowest form of life on a national scale that I think I've ever witnessed. Like the way he's putting things, and it's really, yeah, it's bad. Like, and it's just bad all the way around. Just as a human being, it's bad. And then on top of it, don't act like he doesn't know, like that Jimmy is bad. He knows that Jimmy's bad, but he was hoping, out of all hopes, that Jimmy would come out there and do well. He had it. He had his. He was playing with house money. He had his speech ready in case Jimmy was bad. He had his speech ready in case Jimmy was good, and that's where all the excuses come from. Is that, I mean, he's ready for any eventuality. It doesn't matter. He's a win-win. Like, it's always going to be that way. But
It sucks though too, Peter, because I actually grew up on Cowherd. He's
yeah.
local from Portland, Oregon. He used to be on the local Channel 13 news as the sports anchor, right?
Yeah.
Then he was a local radio guy. And so I followed his career all the way up. And I rooted for him. I always liked him. I do like, he's very intelligent the way that he talks about things and comes up with different angles. I like a lot of that. But this whole thing with Lance has completely turned me off of anything Colin Cowherd does.
Yeah, I've always thought he was a flip flopper. I mean, I've been watching him for a long time, and not really. When I say watching him, I mean paying attention to what he's saying. But I've always thought he was a flip flopper, and he was just waiting for whichever side ended up. He would say both things, and then come back when one of them was true, and say, "Oh, look, I told you." And but that's a lot of the national guys. So I didn't really blame him too much. He was just another national guy to me. So I wasn't too surprised. But I just we're in this position right now, John, to having to listen to a guy like that and the Mike Silvers and those types because of the situation that we're in with Trey Lance and with Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's a mess that the organization has created. Not to say that they shouldn't have drafted Trey Lance or they shouldn't have kept Jimmy. It's just that they were treading that tightrope. And when you don't make it across, now here we are. Here we are, and now you've got to endure all this all year long. We're only at week 3, and people are ready to burn the whole thing down.
I'll say this, Peter, and I know this may be a strong take, but it is what it is to me. If the 49ers do not win on Sunday, and I'm not feeling good about it, I'll say that. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Because if they win, they're in first place. If they do not win on Monday, I really think that we're going to look back on this week against Denver in a year or so down the line and be like, that was officially the end of that team. We keep talking about Super Bowl windows. We keep talking about prime this, and this guy's in his prime, and we got this and that and this and that. We might look back on that Denver game in a year from now, a year and a half from now, and go, that was where I can peg the end of this team as we know it, right? Now, it doesn't mean that they can't retool because there's still a lot of really good players on this team, but you might see some sweeping changes that you weren't necessarily expecting in order to get over the hump. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Still hoping that this team can win. And as bad as it is, like I said, they certainly can beat the Rams. And if they do so, they're 2-2 and first in the West, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, no kidding. But Jesse, how many times have we thought that there was going to be sweeping changes and they do nothing? They do nothing. And they just say, hey, we're going to use all 9 of our draft picks this season when we've never done that before. And it's like this team looks at the things that we all think are going to happen and they say, nope, we're not going to do any of that, but we don't think that we need to. And then somehow, some way it kind of works out, doesn't work out. We don't get all the way, but somehow we get close. And which just keeps making them do it even more. And it's just it's a whole weird relationship that this front office has with the fans. But Jimmy struggles. Was this his version of playing free? Is this the free that he was talking about in the because it looked like the same Jimmy in my estimation. And I thought it was really funny that Shanny and him were kind of going back and forth before the game, him saying, well, you'd have to kind of ask Jimmy what he meant by that because I've always thought he could, he was one of the best throwers, all that other nonsense. But then Jimmy gets out there and it's like he's the same old Jimmy, just a jitterbug back there, doesn't really know where to go with the ball. He even looks at the guy that's wide open and then looks the other way and throws it into coverage.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what they meant. When I broke it down, everybody looked at it from a physical standpoint. Take the reins off, let him throw deep, let him wing it, let him play backyard football. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't want that. Trust me, you do not want that. What I would like to see, and maybe Jimmy pulls this out of Kyle, and it does end up being good long-term for Trey, is I want to see Kyle loosen up from the mental aspect. He can wear on people mentally, I believe, especially the quarterback position. I truly believe that. And that's what I would like to see change a little bit. Put your arm around the quarterback. And he's always done it, oddly enough. He's always done it publicly with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just the little. It's you can catch a clip of him going absolutely ape shit and losing his mind on Jimmy on the sidelines. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I understand that you get heated in battle, but man, that has to wear on people. It just does.
Yeah.
And last offseason, Jimmy's camp did come out and talk about that. It was kind of a story that was pushed under the rug, but there was a story that came out that his camp was not happy at all and did not think that Kyle Shanahan, the whole time he had been with the 49ers, had treated him fairly. They were always searching for something else. They never, ever sat down and had a conversation and tried to make it work and get the best out of Jimmy. They were just always looking for the next best thing, which is kind of true. And I know
Yeah.
Jimmy's not great, right? Like, this is not me defending Jimmy as a player, but Jimmy is a human. Man, put your arm around him. And we see the same things with Trey a little bit. So at some point, you got to loosen up a little bit.
Yeah.
Mentally, don't wear on these guys. Allow them to play free, but within the structure of the offense. That doesn't mean you stop calling plays. That doesn't mean you don't tell them, hey, this is what I expect to be open. But if it doesn't go exactly how you expect, you cannot lose your mind on these guys repeatedly. You cannot blame these guys repeatedly. You just have to let them grow and be who they are.
Yeah. It's when I think about Jimmy in that aspect, and like I said, it's obviously Jimmy is not a good, what I would call a good quarterback. Like you said, I think he's a starting level quarterback in this league. However, like you said, I think that publicly and privately, nothing good comes of constantly beating people down. It
Mhm.
not like and I know this is gonna sound ridiculous, but I've been a manager of people for years, for going on 20 years now, and nothing ever good comes from just constantly sticking your thumb on somebody and just rubbing. Like it never works out well. Like you said, it has to be positive reinforcement, and you can still reinforce your point without just constantly just beating them down. And not to say that Jimmy doesn't deserve some of the criticism. He absolutely does. But at the same time, that's your guy. You've got to go into battle with this guy every week. And so you've got a long season to go. And if you guys are at going at it right now, guess what's going to happen 2 weeks from now? And just like you said, his management team was talking about, that people don't forget that kind of stuff. And it's something that they hold underneath, and don't think that they don't talk with other players about it. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that can be learned on both sides, and it's but yeah, obviously the situation isn't perfect. But what the most I would say the more important news, the most important news is that we learned that we're going to lose Trent Williams for probably a significant amount of time with a high ankle sprain. Um, what are they going to do long term, like for that time frame at left tackle? Because what we saw this past week was, I mean, it was a revolving door in the middle of the game, and they still didn't find anybody that could really take a hold of that position. So I'm just wondering what we're going to see on this. I mean, the whole offensive line honestly did not play well. I haven't seen the PFF grades yet, but it didn't look good. So what do you think is going to happen with that?
Yeah, I mean, and now they're talking about maybe bringing in Brunskill to start for Brendel. So you're going to have
Oh
a
my
whole
God.
shakeup here on what could happen with this offensive line. This is the unfortunate part. And again, we knew this was coming.
Hmm.
Trent Williams misses games every year, right? He obviously had the cancer thing. Thank God he's healthy and back from that.
Yeah.
But if we remove that, he misses multiple games every year. He has for a long time. So to think that you were going to get 17 healthy games out of Trent Williams, and that would be enough to mask the issues on this offensive line that you decided to roll with it as is, was laughable. And unfortunately, it's happening at the worst time. You haven't figured it out as a team. You should be at minimum 2-1 right now. I
Mm.
mean, realistically, could be 3-0.
Yeah.
And now you're going into a must-win game must-win division game. Things aren't going to get easier. And if he misses 6 weeks, I mean, just off the top of my head, he's going to miss Chiefs, Rams twice, Chargers. Do you feel confident about winning any of those games without Trent Williams? I don't. I certainly don't.
I mean,
So,
I was questioning with just Jimmy in there with Trent Williams.
right,
So
right. Yeah, and Jimmy, that's the other thing, right? Quick release and listen. If they don't figure out that left tackle position, Jimmy is going to be murdered back there, and we will see Purdy whether we want to or not. So it's very unfortunate. So we'll see how it plays out again this week. Winning cures all. If they figure it out this week, it's okay. But if they lose this week, I have a feeling we're headed towards some dark places this season.
I'm with you. Like, I just think that this was, we all knew that the first half of this schedule was kind of if they didn't win those first 2 games, that it could get ugly. Even if Trey had started, we were kind of iffy about what our record would be. And we knew that health was going to be a big issue. Well, health is not in our favor already, as usual. And it is what it is. We all knew that Trent was going to miss at least a couple of games. We probably didn't think that it was going to be early in the season, and especially not with Jimmy Garoppolo back there. But like I said, like you said, Jimmy is going to get killed back there if without Trent Williams. Not that I wish any kind of injury on Jimmy, but the other part of it is that I think that teams know now that Jimmy wants to get the ball out as quickly as possible. That's why he has so many batted passes every single week, is because they already know he wants to get it out. Like, so now what do you think that they're going to be ready for now that Trent Williams is out? They're going to be ready for him to get the ball out as soon as he hikes. So it's going to be.
Well, and quite frankly, the batted pass that I think DJ Jones had,
saved another.
If that didn't happen, that was a pick. That was going to be a pick 6 possibly. So, it's funny that when he makes mistakes, he still gets bailed out, right?
He's like 9 lives.
You have a pick 6, but you stepped out of bounds first. You had another pick that could have been a pick 6, but it gets batted down first. This guy has, I mean, not 9 lives. He's got like 109 lives. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's undoubtedly. But what was kind of more discouraging, because I mean, was that Burford kind of got pushed around in the middle quite a few times, and like you said, Brendel didn't look good. I didn't really see anything too bad with Aaron Banks. Like, he didn't seem. I mean, the whole offensive line it looked so bad that, I mean, I don't think there was anybody that really had a good game per se. So it's and then I know the Jimmy truthers are probably pointing to that too, but there was still ample time for him to throw the ball a bunch of times, and it is what it is. But I'm not going to
go back and I had thrown out before the game. That was one of my keys to the game, is everybody was talking about just how good we had nothing to worry about with this offensive line. Look at how good the PFF this and that.
Yeah.
They played 2 of the worst teams in the league, and neither one of them had a very good defensive line. And I hoped that it was going to hold up, but I knew that this was the first real test for this offensive line. And I don't think it was horrible. Like that, to me, that's the silver lining, is I don't think it was just atrocious, because you're right. Jimmy did have plenty of times where he could have thrown the ball and he sat back in the pocket and just threw the ball into double coverage with nobody around him. So those things happened as well. But this is what we can expect from this offensive line, because they're also developing, Peter. I mean, we talk about giving grace to Trey Lance and developing him. Those 3 up front deserve the same grace, because none of them have really played professional football. And so when you go into a season and you're looking at arguably the most important part of your team is right up the middle with those 3 players that are protecting your quarterback and the quarterback all in experience. Yeah, I mean, chances are you're going to have some struggles throughout the season. So that's what we're seeing. And these guys, It's not their fault. Of course they want to play, but they weren't drafted. They weren't the ones that chose not to be replaced. And so they're just out there playing football and developing, and they get that grace.
Yeah, and offensive lines always take time to gel. I'm not really saying they just had a bad game. Like in my estimation, I mean they just had a bad game. It was more about their
But it was also their
consistency.
only first real test, Peter. Like that's
True, but the consistency on the I'm talking about like in the running game and like it was just the consistency. It was like make a block, miss a block, make a block, and I get what you're saying. And I said in my last show that it's going to take these guys time to gel. So be patient with these guys, and I'm being patient. But but yeah, I think we can acknowledge that they missed a few in McGlinchey. I think we called Miss McGlinchey's name way too many times. But
yeah, he's not coming back, right? Like
no, he
McGlinchey's
better
not
not
going to
be
be here. That's one guy that won't be here next year, it seems. So we'll see how this plays out.
for sure. But so this was an interesting thought I had the other day is that why all of a sudden the sea change when Shanny first got here, he liked to run by committee. He would run like 2 and 3 sometimes running backs in a game. Now it seems like he just likes to ride one guy into the ground. Like, and why does he not? Why do you think he doesn't run the ball by committee anymore?
I think that in the past, he was trying to figure out who was who and played everybody's strengths. But it seems like really since players starting going down with injuries and kind of mass produced, he's just like, let me just write it till the wheels fall off and then I'll get the next one in. And then I'll
Yeah.
write it till the wheels fall off and then I'll get the next one in. I don't know. I don't know why. I would say my best guess, and this seems to be a Kyle Shanahan theme, he
Mm-hmm.
lacks trust. Right? He didn't let Trey throw because he lacked trust in Trey. He doesn't give Jimmy freedom because he lacks trust in Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't let TDP even suit up in week 1, and Mason gets 1 carry because they're young and he lacks trust. Hell, Womack's a rookie and was playing really good football.
Yeah.
We replaced him with Lenore.
Now Lenore played well.
He did. And I'm an Oregon guy. I was geeked when they picked Lenore and I was geeked when they picked Womack. I was excited for both of those guys. I thought they could both contribute as nickel corners, but that's just what he does. He wants to play guys that he can trust and guys that he knows what he's going to get out of them. Even if it's not the best, he's like, I've got a baseline idea of what I'm going to get out of you. Let me see if I can scheme around that and do just enough to go win this game. And more often than not lately, it hasn't worked out well for him.
Yeah. And you said it. You said it. And like, that's the perfect way to put it. He does just enough. It's just enough. Like, I know exactly what he's going to give me. He's going to give me just enough. That's why he leans on the Tevin Colemans, the Tevin Colemans, the Jeff Wilsons, like those guys that give him just enough. They're mid, like, but they're not going to have they're not going to have the deep lows. Like they're just going to, but they're going to give you, they're not going to give you anything dynamic. They're just going to give you just enough. And that's, I guess that's the thing that I've been looking for a way to word that for weeks now. And it's just, I think that's my frustration. And it's funny because Pinor asked the question, just happened to ask the question at the same time. Are you guys still hanging on to this regime? But that's the way I look at this regime is they do just enough. It's always just enough. And it's never too much. It's never too little. It's always just enough to keep you right here. But they're not going to go do take a chance and do something that's going to get them over the top. And I think, so how do you feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but as far as hanging on to this regime, it's tough, Pinor, because early in the show, I said that Kyle gets a pass. Everybody looks at Kyle as an offensive coordinator, and he's not. He's the head coach of this football team, right? He's not the offensive coordinator. So we can't treat him like the offensive coordinator. We can't just talk about play calling and play design. It's everything with Kyle. He's very reactive. He is not proactive. And there's just a lot to be desired with his leadership ability, in my opinion. That being said, I'm okay with getting rid of this regime, but I need a solution, right?
Yes.
And everybody's trying to throw out the same solution, which
Ugh,
is,
it's not a
uh,
solution.
well, yeah. So everybody wants what's his name from the Saints? What's his name?
Peyton.
Why am I drawing a blank? Yeah,
Peyton.
Sean Payton. Yeah,
And
everybody
like,
wants him, right? But there's a problem with that. This is also a guy that said he would have been playing Jimmy over Trey.
yeah.
Okay, so if we get somebody new, we basically can put an end to Trey Lance in a 49er uniform. Because what happens is all of these guys come in, they make the changes they want, they get the players they want,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that. So if we want, it's a double-edged sword because if we want Trey, we kind of got to keep Kyle for another year, right? So
Yep.
which one is it? If you want to get rid of Kyle, just expect Trey's going to be gone too. So
Yeah.
we got to take all those things into account when we look at this situation.
What's funny is that Peyton had his own quarterback issues before he left. He
Oh, for
he
sure.
couldn't decide between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, and
Right.
it was and that was he was sitting there trying to play both at the same time and all that other stuff. So I mean, do 49er fans really want that here and bring that into now? Granted, we have good players. Guess what? The Saints had good players too when he was there.
Also, let's not forget that the Super Bowl they got was off of Bounty Gate, right?
Yeah,
That's how they
yeah,
won their
that's
Super
true.
Bowl was a Bounty Gate. So, I mean, I get he has a ring, but there's a grain of salt with that ring.
That's true.
And maybe he's been more consistent. His team's gotten the playoffs more often, but the Saints also had some of the worst heartbreaking losses that we've ever seen. And that was all under his regime. So to me, I want somebody, and it sucks because if you're replacing Kyle, I'm sure you would love to have somebody that's proven and great and all these things. But those guys aren't just out there to be had. You're going to have to take a chance on the next hot thing and hope that it hits. And I know that everybody, Mike McDaniel, we should have kept. They're 3 games in. Can we pump the brakes?
Yeah,
If we can't, because most of us have said you cannot judge Trey after 3 games. Well, that goes when you're good too.
Mm-hmm.
I get they started out 3-0. I was as shocked as you were that they beat the Ravens and then beat the Bills. But let's look at how those games went down as well, right? They're down. They were getting their heads kicked in for most of the Ravens game. And they come back and end up winning that. They play the most depleted Bills team ever.
Yeah.
No starting secondary players at all.
I was going to say it's
for
a
the
second
Bills.
team defense.
It was terrible. And, they squeaked it out. Good for them at home. And the offense didn't look great against a very depleted defense. So let's pump the brakes. I'm not saying McDaniels won't be great. Maybe McDaniel was better for Kyle. Maybe that is the missing elixir for Kyle. That's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, like all of these things, we don't know who any of these guys are long term. 3 wins, 3 losses, whatever. You just can't make those rash judgments. You really can't.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a waste of time because Kyle's not going anywhere. I don't get the idea that Kyle's going to go anywhere anytime soon.
No, I don't think so either.
And we just need to support this team. I'm really big on. I know that this episode has been kind of a lot of kind of down on the team, but we're coming off of a really bad loss, guys. Like a really bad loss, and so pardon us if we're a little bit. There wasn't much that we had good to talk about on the offensive side of the ball. But I did want to talk about what are the wide receivers? What do you think the wide receivers are thinking at this point? Like the Danny Grays and the Ray McLeods, they didn't come here for this. I mean, not that Danny Gray had a choice, but but I mean, Ray McLeod definitely didn't come here for this.
Danny Gray lost his mind on Jimmy last week and didn't play this week, right? And I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
He has to realize he's a rookie. And I get it. It's frustrating. I'm sure it's super frustrating to be a receiver with Jimmy Garoppolo, but like you gotta kind of bite your lip and push through it, Danny. You can't lose your mind on the quarterback that's been here for 5 years that the team loves. Like that's just not a good way to start things out. But yeah,
Ayuk didn't look happy either on the sideline from what I
I don't
saw.
think any of them are. Let's be real. I mean, Debo. It's funny because for as much crap as Debo got in the offseason, and yes, he requested a trade and all those things, right? Seems like forever ago. But when Debo's on the field, he's always given it his all.
Hmm.
After Trey went down, he was the one that actually said the best things out of everybody that was interviewed. I felt
Hmm.
like he was the most sincere and the most polished. And you could tell he probably wanted to lose it on what should have been a touchdown pass to him. And Jimmy G just completely underthrew him and he had to fall backwards and catch it. And then they ended
Yeah,
up not scoring at all on that drive.
yeah,
You could tell he was super frustrated, but he did a good job of fixing his body language almost immediately. So, yeah, I'm sure these receivers are frustrated. By the way, Debo has 0 receiving touchdowns. He has a rushing touchdown this year.
yeah,
Ayuk just caught a touchdown yesterday. That was his first.
yeah.
Meanwhile, River Craycraft and Dante Pettis have a combined 3 receiving touchdowns this year. They also happen to have 3 catches this year. So I'm sure that these receivers are extremely frustrated.
Yeah, because this is the way they eat, and this is those numbers. I mean, Debo got paid, but like Ayuk is gonna look to get paid eventually, and like these other guys are just. I'm sure they're wondering, like, well, I mean, how are we going to win like this? And I'm sure that the guys that have been around for a while are probably telling him, stay the course. Like eventually we don't know how we do it. Like we just end up in the playoffs somehow. And but yeah, like you said, I would be frustrated if I was a wide receiver on this team right now because you just don't know if you're gonna eat, how you're gonna eat, and like what you're gonna have to do to eat. Like what are you gonna have to be like Debo and take carries in order to get touches? Who knows? But it's
If I have
pretty
to watch Ayuk run wide open on a dig route again with Jimmy Garoppolo just bypassing that he's wide open and checking
yeah,
it down, the way that I watched it happen repeatedly last year, holy shit, dude.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know how often I can watch that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we got a long season to go, bud. So but let's move on to a lighter side, the lighter side of this team, and let's talk about the defense a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, the defense, do they have any blame at all in this game? Like, I mean, I know that there was automatically some people that were like, "Oh, well, they let them down the field when it mattered most." I think that was what Mike Silver said, or something
Get
to that
out of
effect.
here. Yeah, get out of here. I'm so no, no, no. Because this was also very different. And even in the Bears game, I this is why I said in the Bears game, nobody really lost that game. I just felt like nobody went out and won it either. Right?
Yeah,
The defense played really, really good from a standpoint that they kept getting stops, but they weren't forcing turnovers. And then they had those crazy penalties
yeah,
that outright ruined it for them. Because if we remove those penalties, they were going to continue to stop the Bears, and they would have won 10-3 or whatever. That that would have been the way that game went. But they shot themselves in the foot. Now, a lot of other things happened as well, and that's why I said it was the ultimate team loss. This week, they didn't get the turnovers also, but they held the Broncos to 9 points. 9.
yeah,
9 points. That's it.
yeah.
And if Jimmy doesn't hand them 2, they still win the game. They still did enough to win the game. So and really, actually, the defense didn't even give them that. The defense gave up 6 points because Kyle handed them 3 points as
Yeah,
well.
I was gonna say,
He had the fourth down where they were in field goal range, could have taken a holding penalty, made it 3rd and 17, and sure, maybe I mean, first of all, they weren't going to get a first down. Chances of that happening were so slim to none. They could not move the ball. The 49ers defense was still fresh. They would pin their ears back. They'd get to Chase Russ, and figure it out. Maybe they get back in a field goal range and the result's the same. But
But
that's worst case scenario. They weren't
exactly.
giving up a first down there. So really, Kyle gave up 3, in my opinion. Jimmy gave up 2. How many points they score? 11. So the defense gave up 6 freaking
6
points.
points.
What more can you ask for them? What more
Yeah.
against Russell Wilson of all people?
Yeah, it's I thought that that defense played outstanding. Like I haven't, and Hafunga had, like, I think somebody was saying that he had one of his it was technically his worst game of the year or whatever the case was. But that guy just flashes every time he's on the field. And I was surprised that I was really scared when they put Lenore out there. Not that Lenore had looked good in the offseason and in preseason, but I was like, well, what happened? I thought Womack was hurt and they just didn't put him on the injury report or something to that effect. But Womack still found a way on special teams to affect the game. I just
Yeah.
think that that's a guy you have to have on the field. Like, he just finds a way. He's one of the guys. He's like how he's always around. He finds a way to affect the game. And that's what the 49ers honestly were missing for years. We've always had I shouldn't say always. The last few years we've had really good defense, but we've always lacked playmaking in the defense. And now you have like kind of 2 guys that really kind of make things happen. And I really didn't understand why you would take him off. I'm still interested to hear. I don't know if you heard anything of why they did that, but like
Yeah, I mean, all I'd heard is that Lenore had been practicing really well, and he felt like that was the decision to make. And you're right, Lenore to me is kind of, we'll switch positions, but he's kind of the Jaquiski Tart when it comes to nickel corners, right? He did a good
yeah.
job. He's in the right spots, did enough. He's not allowing anything big, but he's not going to show up and gamble and get the big pick for you. To where Womack's more of the Hafunga of nickel corners, where
Mhm.
he's always around the ball. He's just making plays left and right. Now, he may get burned a play or two, but the flip side is he might also get you a couple picks in a game randomly. So it comes down to preference. The thing is that when we look at this team after this week, we'll see. I mean, Armstead might come back this week, and then Ward and Verrett should be back the week after. But we don't need reinforcements on defense. This defense has done everything it can do. I mean, what are those guys going to do? The defense legitimately gave up basically 6 points in 2 games.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
more do you want from them? Are we expecting those guys come back and they give up 3 points in 2 games? Is that what it's going to take to win these games? I don't know.
Oh, and I promise, and I agree with what you're saying. I promised Certified. I know you know who Certified is in the spaces, and I promised him that I would ask you this question.
Mm.
So he seems to think that, and I didn't notice at the time. I can think back to the game and I can see kind of what he's saying. So Warner really kind of struggled when they it really wasn't his fault that they were struggling, because I feel like it was more Kinlaw getting pushed around in the middle, and that caused them to be able to get at the second level and push Warner out the way. But is his lack of physicality like kind of an issue from time to time as far as the run goes? What do you think about Warner and how he played?
I don't know if it's an issue, but it's certainly noticeable,
Yeah,
right? And that was one thing. People love to look at a box score. If they don't see anything, they think a
yeah,
player doesn't play good. A player doesn't play good. But Armstead being out, I mean, he's really good in the run game. And he also is a big reason. Fungus had his worst game. It was still a good game, but had his worst game. A lot of that was because Armstead wasn't there to clean up things for him and allow him to missile through the line of scrimmage and make the plays he normally does, right?
yeah,
So that's where Armstead helps. Certainly. I mean, Fred Warner, if he has a weakness, it's that he's not very physical,
yeah. He's
right?
just not a
And
big guy.
he's not. He's not physically imposing. He's not a thumper. He tries to kind of make up that with the theatrics he does and
Yeah,
getting himself in and whatever. But he's a playmaker. He is a
yeah,
playmaker. And so very rarely are you going to get both, right?
yeah,
There's not too many Ray Lewises. There's not too many Patrick Willises that don the field in our lifetime. So He's extremely good. He does have a weakness, but it's not like he's not a sure tackler. I think he's, for the most part, a good tackler. He's
Hmm.
just not going to lay the wood. And usually, if you're looking for him to stand up the running back in the hole and stop them for a negative gain, maybe on a 3rd and 1, probably not going to happen. The running back's
Yeah,
probably going to fall forward and get the first down. And that if he has any weakness, that's what it is.
yeah, for sure. But I would say about Warner is that he's the prototypical guy for today, like in today's
Yeah.
NFL, and like the way he covers guys, like the fact that we don't hear his name a lot is probably a good thing. Like we don't hear about him missing a lot of tackles. Like you said, you get the occasional one where the running back pushes their way forward, but for the most part, I just look at it as for what the NFL is today. I feel like he's perfect, and he's really the reason why this defense can do what it does up front. Like it's because of the cover. It's the Everybody kind of looked at this defensive line and thought that they were the reason why this defense goes. But you got to think about how these linebackers cover and how they give that defensive line. Our corners weren't always great, but because you had those cover linebackers, they really helped out in that pass rush. Like as far as just covering those tight ends, covering those underneath routes.
Mhm.
And I just think that Warner, I would if there was a critique, I guess, that you could say that he's not good. And saying that he's not good isn't even the right word. Like just saying that he's not as physical, like you were wording. So I mean, I still would rather have Warner than probably any other linebacker, middle linebacker in the league. Like in my estimation, I don't know if you have another guy in mind,
Yeah,
but
I agree with that, but also, I mean, I just feel like it's being nitpicky, right?
yeah,
If we're nitpicking the defense for anything right now, okay.
yeah,
I feel like it's a shot that's not aimed in the right
yeah.
direction.
They got
Like,
101 yards on 33 carries. So
right.
it's yeah,
And
I
that's
mean,
two very good running backs, by the way. Those are two
yeah,
very good running backs. That's a hell of a 1-2 tandem that they've got, and they didn't have Armstead. If
and
Armstead
that's what
plays,
I'm
they
saying
probably hold them under 100.
for sure. And their top running back got yards, and
Right.
so and I think he had one like a 20-yard run or something at some point. So yeah, I don't know. Like, but as long as they can defend like they are as a unit, I'm not worried in the least about this unit. But do you what like I mean, I give this unit an A plus for yesterday. I thought they were going to tire out way before they actually did. But what was your grade for the unit? And can they keep this amount of intensity all season if this offense kind of struggles?
I mean, if they get those reinforcements in, I would say probably more often than not, they're not going to do what they did there probably,
Mm,
but they're going to keep the 49ers in all games, no matter how bad it is offensively. The 49ers are always going to be within a score or two because of that. And so we'll see how it plays out. But I'm with Pinor. It's an A plus.
yeah, for sure.
I don't know how you look at that defense and say anything bad about it. Now I know that people want to reach and they're grasping at straws as to why their man Jimmy, who should be playing because it's a Super Bowl window and whatever. Maybe that's where we're getting some of that from. But man, this defense is really freaking good.
It's real. It's for real.
This might be the best defense the 49ers have had maybe since 94. I know it's
Yeah.
crazy. We had the Willis, Bowman, and Alden, and those are some great defenses, probably harder hitting. But as far as coverage skills with the rules the way that they are, and they're even more lenient than ever in a quarterback's favor, Russell Wilson didn't look good yesterday. Maybe that's who Russell Wilson is. I know that he's been declining. Some people have been posting stuff on there. But man, for a good chunk of that game, they made Russell Wilson look worse than Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Garoppolo was not playing good football, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing to say it's a big feather in the cap of that defense.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, like at the beginning, is that a majority of the quarterbacks in this league are not top 5 guys. And this defense, I think, is going to get a chance to show this like week in and week out, just because that's why they got so much depth on this defensive line. That's why they have so much depth all over on this defense, even at linebacker, which is a weird place to have depth. But Flanagan Foles stepped right in. They lost Aziz, and Flanagan Foles stepped in, and you barely even noticed. And then you've got the secondary, which they're about to get. Who would have thought that Tayshaun Gibson would have come in here and off the street, and now he's what, the 4th best rated safety in the league? It's really like D'Amico. I can't speak enough about D'Amico Ryans and the job that he's done with this defense. It's crazy, but we're gonna get to our next week's matchup, and we got the Rams next, which is always to me, it's kind of even though we've had a really good record against them, it's always, to me, it's a pick 'em. Like, very rarely do we just destroy them. It's always kind of it's a division game. It's going to be I think it's going to be really close. How much confidence do we have going into this game, and on the flip side, how bad can it get?
Like I said, I think the defense can keep them in any of these games. I'm curious to see how they play Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
I personally don't like the Lenore matchup on Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
I'd rather see Womack just because of his length and his speed. I think he can make up for maybe a misplay or a misstep to start a route. We'll see how that plays out. But that being said, the Rams are one of those teams that certainly they don't look the best either. Let's be real. The Rams are 2-1. They aren't playing their best football either.
Allen Robinson looks terrible.
It's so bad. It's not looking good. For you fantasy owners, I also am an Allen Robinson owner. I feel your pain. But yeah, Trent Williams, man, that's the one to me. I don't know if the 49ers can overcome that. I don't. And the moment that Trey left, for the most part, this run game has been once Seattle got into the second half and was like, oh yeah, we're playing Jimmy, let's run the Jimmy game plan. Mm-hmm. This team has not ran the ball particularly amazing. Now, Wilson had a couple big breaks that really made it look better than what it was yesterday. But now you remove Trent Williams from that fold too.
Mm-hmm.
If the 49ers can't run the ball, and they most likely probably won't be that effective in running the ball, the Rams figured something out in that NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
If they cannot run the ball effectively, I do not trust Jimmy Garoppolo at all to go out and win this game. Not one iota. So I don't feel good about this game right now. I don't. Now, maybe, middle of the week, I'll change my mind. But right now, nope. I don't feel good about it.
I don't feel good either about it, because just thinking about the things that we've said in this show, and we were just talking about Womack. But we also said something about Kyle that they don't necessarily like to put rookies in those types of situations, especially not on Cooper Kupp. And I'm afraid that they're going to start with Lenore, who's not as quick. Like you said, it's not as quick as Womack. I want Womack out there because I think he's just a gamer. And
I agree.
And it's just, I think that if you're going to put somebody out there, he would be the one I would want to see on Cooper Kupp. But this isn't Madden. This is real life. and I don't think that the coaching staff necessarily wants to put a rookie on Cooper Kupp. But I will be, if they do, I will be shocked to see. I will be happy to see it. Like you, I am iffy about this game because just because of what we just saw in yesterday. It's this offense. I just don't know what we're going to see, because if you're going to keep running Jeff Wilson, if you're just going to keep trying to run Jeff Wilson, who's to me a whole bunch of mid, Like, and then you don't have Trent Williams, like you said. This offensive line kind of reeling last week. I don't know if Brunskill is going to be able to play. Who's the Aaron stopper, right? And it's just there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions. Now, can they pull it out? This team has all the talent on the planet to be able to just turn it around and flip the switch. Like, and it could look something completely different. That's part of the frustration of our team is that they can just flip the switch out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden they look like world beaters. So can they win? Of course. Do I have a lot of confidence going into this matchup? I do not. But
do we know? I'm going to try to find it here. Hold on a second before I open my mouth on this one. But I really feel like this isn't going to look too good. Let's see. I'm trying to find the play-by-play in – here we go, play-by-play. Okay. So end of quarter 2. Okay. So since the second half, so once Jimmy got figured out essentially, right?
mm-hmm.
And Seattle put the Jimmy game plan out, the 49ers have scored 2 touchdowns in 6 quarters with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm. Okay.
That's crazy.
They've had 1, 2. Yeah, I see that's it. 14 points. That's all the offense has scored in 6 quarters once the Jimmy game plan came out, right? And I say that because in the first half, they clearly were not. They didn't have it together. Seattle didn't defensively. You could tell they still kind of were trying to play things like Trey was there. And then in the second half, they adjusted. They went against what they would expect from Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
And in 6 quarters, a Jimmy-led offense has put up 14 points. I don't know where the points are going to come from. I don't. People have figured out Debo, so that's kind of done. Where are you going to manufacture points from? I'm very curious to see.
Especially
so
with
unless
the way it is.
and here's the thing, Peter. They even had good field position in this game.
Yeah.
They started off on their 43. This is in the second half alone. Started off on their 43. Then they had the next drive was the safety pick 6. Then they started off on their 43 again, and then the Broncos 41. And they came away from those 3 drives 25 yards, a turnover, and 3 points. So even when they're getting really good field position and they've got to just basically get 30 yards or less to just put up 3, they couldn't even figure that out.
Yeah, no, for real. Like I'm completely with you. I'm really, that's why I say I can't say that I have confidence because I don't know where the points are going to come from. But that's why I said at the beginning of this, when last week, when they against in the Seattle game, that's what I think what I got so frustrated in that last show, as I said, Kyle, you're the offensive genius. I need to see points somehow, some way. You've got to figure out how to get points. Like this isn't the first time you've had Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback. And granted, people are figuring out like all the little bells and whistles that you're doing, but that's why you're a genius, right? Like that's why you're gonna figure out some other little kind of wrinkle, like that's gonna somehow get us points. And so it'll be really interesting to see. I'm sure we're gonna hear a lot more stuff all throughout this week about injuries and who's in, who's out, like how Jimmy's looking or feeling, and how Kyle is feeling. It's going to be an interesting watch this whole season. How the dynamic, not just of this locker room, but of the culture can the culture that they've built take this kind of tension? And like, I'm really interested to see it. Like, yeah, I don't know about you, Jesse.
I think that's where it does get interesting, right? Is they started out 3-5 last year. They were able to pull themselves out of that. and make a run and get to the playoffs. And maybe they have something like that in them again. But doing that to yourself 2 years in a row, I'm gonna bet that you're probably not gonna figure it out the second time if that happens again. And when teams start losing, especially teams that have a major veteran presence the way the 49ers do, that's where we're gonna see if Kyle's worth keeping to me. Right? A lot of people are probably looking at it and say, well, if they have a losing season, I'm getting rid of Kyle. I'm actually kind of holding off on that. If they have a losing season, and I'm curious to see how this plays out if they have a losing season, how much gets out? How much infighting do we see? Can he hold it together? If he can, then I actually, in my opinion, I learned more about Kyle than I knew when the team was winning.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
So, but if he can't, that's when I'm going to say maybe it's time to get rid of Kyle. So, if this plays out, to me, there's still a lot worth watching, even if they're losing, because I want to see how that dynamic plays out. I'm with you.
Yeah, for sure. And with that being said, hey, Jesse, it has been a joy having you on. And even though like we don't really have glowing things to talk about with 49er football right now, it was great having you on and just talking it up and maybe coming up with alternative viewpoints that for some of the fans out there that some things that you guys just didn't think about, or some things that maybe you thought about, but you're happy to hear somebody else is thinking them too. And but yeah, I really appreciate you being on. And why don't you tell them one more time where they can find you on everywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Last Second Sports on YouTube is the best way to find me. So tap in over there.
Yeah, for sure. And just so everybody knows, like I'm on Twitter. Make sure like that the handle's Peter Lucas 8. And then also you can get the audio version of this on anywhere where you can find your audio podcast. I'm on YouTube. I'm got some shorts on TikTok, and I've got some stuff on Instagram now. But where it doesn't matter where you get, just go get it. And once again, one more time, thank you to my guest Jessie today. But thank you to all those in the chat. Thank you guys for. Make sure you give us a like, comment, tell your friends. But yeah, with as always, go Niners.